But at first I thought I would just begin. We can just settle into a brief practice. Just invite you just to sit upright, find that comfortable posture, although I was aware that Angie's just been leading us through a longer practice as well. Just settling into the sound of the bell as it fades. And feeling that sense of uplift through your upper body and feeling solid through your lower body. As if you can see your body perhaps as a mountain, solid, strong, and confident in the face of whatever may come. And if your mind wanders, which of course it will, just bringing it back to this image of your body, solid and strong as a mountain. Or perhaps just shifting your awareness now to your breath, just enjoying the gentle rise and fall of each in-breath and each out-breath. Almost like waves of the ocean. Some longer, some shorter. Some smooth or some rough, but just like the waves, your breath just keeps coming. One after the next. Washing away whatever distractions may be pulling your attention. And shifting now your awareness toward your mind. Seeing your mind like the sky on a beautiful August day, stretching out, infinitely vast, expansive, and just accepting of whatever comes through, clouds, storms, moods and thoughts, emotions. Just like the sky, your mind is big enough to hold any of these. Just watching as they pass. And shifting your awareness now to your heart. Just feeling your heart as if it's shining like the sun. Just radiating out warmth, compassion, kindness and acceptance for yourself and for all of us in this conference, wherever we're tuning in from. Your heart shining out that compassion all the way around the world, from Singapore to Cambridge and everywhere in between. Just connecting all of us. As we come to the end of the practice, you can just allow yourself to smile, just allow a smile to play across your lips. We may not be able to see each other, but perhaps we can just send a smile. Allowing your eyes to open. Just bringing your awareness back outward. And if you like, perhaps even before you bring your attention back to the screen, maybe just looking around the room a little bit. We've spent so much time these last 6 months on our screens. It can be good to get a break. Our screens actually, they disrupt the way we breathe. They disrupt what we perceive. We know that social media distorts how we understand things, right? Everything and everyone is flat. And just taking a look around the room, right? Noticing the three-dimensionality, noticing the corners, noticing what's beautiful in your field of vision. And just bringing your eyes back. That last bit is a simple practice I learned actually when I was in India a couple of years ago at the Mindful India conference, called the 20-20-20 practice. Every 20 minutes, just look about 20 meters in the distance for about 20 seconds, just to reset yourself from the Zoom gloom or the Zoom doom that we're all experiencing so much of the time, right, day after day as we live our lives online. And so thank you for the lovely introduction, Angie, and just to share a little bit more about mindfulness and my journey with mindfulness. You know, to me, a lot of my work began sharing mindfulness with kids, and my own journey with mindfulness, actually, I feel lucky that it began when I was young, despite the fact that I never heard the word mindfulness. Right? It was not very trendy back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, right? But I had these experiences that were something like mindfulness. I remember walking in the woods at camp, right? And the counselor is saying to us, just walk as silently as you can in the woods. If you've ever tried to walk silently, it's actually a lot like mindful walking. You have to really pay attention to each step in a really deliberate, intentional way. And we'd sit down in the woods and they'd say, let's just listen to the sounds of the silence in the forest. And of course, when I was a kid, I thought, we're not going to hear anything, right? But sure enough, right? You can hear the trees whispering to each other. Sounds in the underbrush, or the birds, distant cars. Right? And it felt suddenly like the world seemed alive. It felt just magical almost. Or just watching clouds in the sky with my dad, just watching as they disappeared. Right? Same kind of thing. So many of us have experienced something like mindfulness even before, right? We maybe came to this conference or we took that MBSR course, right? And so many of us then came to mindfulness because something wasn't going well in our life. So fast forward me 20 years from when I was a kid to when I was at university, and I was really struggling with anxiety, with depression, with stress. And that's actually when I was taking some time off from university that I ended up finding mindfulness. My parents actually dragged me on this retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and suddenly my life felt so different. I felt so transformed. I felt connected. I felt creative. I felt calm for the first time in such a long time. And that's, you know, again, about 20 years ago, that's when I knew I really wanted to dedicate my life to this, to start sharing these practices with young people, with older people. I became a teacher for a few years. From there, became a therapist, a clinical psychologist, and then doing more and more of this work and having so much fun doing it. And now getting to, well, sometimes getting to travel to amazing places, of course, and someday again, we all will, right? And learning, you know, as I've given talks and learning from the folks in the audiences and having such an amazing time sharing practices, right, across the world with so many different people, right, with this beautiful give and take. And it's amazing, actually, you know, the way that we're connected now more than ever, being able to share. It's not the same as in person, but it is actually, as our world changes, we're able to share mindfulness with each other and share the science of mindfulness. I know my friend Sarah Lazar is here talking about the science, and other folks from the .B program and other colleagues I have around the world. We're not together in person, but we will be again, but we're still connecting. So just thinking a little bit more kind of about these times that we're in and thinking about the pandemic, a month or two in, I was sitting in the backyard with my wife and watching our kids play and thinking to myself, the kids are always going to remember this time, right? And my wife kind of looked over at me and was like, everyone is going to remember this time. This is unforgettable. My wife is actually a medical historian. She studies plagues and pandemics across history. She said in 1,000 years, people are going to remember this time. And I was thinking about it, and I was really thinking about these practices and what they have to offer, and thinking about how to be more resilient through this challenging time, and thinking about so many spiritual practices as well as secular wisdom and philosophies really ask us to take the big view, to look back, right? Sometimes even to look back from, as if we're looking back from our grave, to our lives and what we did with these times. And I don't want to go that far, but I started thinking about it as if I was looking back from the end of this pandemic, because this will end. The world will be different, but this time that we're in, right? These quarantines and lockdowns, right? This time will end, right? How do I want to have spent this time? And at first I thought about what do I want to do during this time? And of course, everyone on social media is saying, I'm going to read War and Peace. I'm going to learn 7 languages, right? I'm going to, run a marathon in my living room. I'm going to learn to meditate. And I thought about this, and then I thought back to Jon Kabat-Zinn, right? And what does he say, right? We spend so much time being human doings, we forget to be human beings. And so it became more a question of not just what do I want to do during this time, but who do I want to be during this time? How do I want to remember myself? How do I want my kids to remember me? Who do I want to be? The joke I've been saying that, of course, other places in the world, I don't know if it makes as much sense, but people in Australia were laughing at this recently too, right? That do I want to be the guy that gets the last roll of toilet paper from the grocery store? Or do I want to be the guy that knocks on my neighbor's door and asks if they need anything from the grocery store when I'm going out, right? And really thinking about, these times that can really help us, stressful times can help us really clarify our values. And so part of what this talk really wants to cover is this idea of creating resilience and growth, in fact, post-traumatic growth through mindfulness. Right? But again, where it really starts first is with us, right? Thich Nhat Hanh, a wonderful mindfulness teacher who fled Vietnam after the fall of the South in the 1970s, describes, right, these boats full of refugees floating around, actually not too far from Singapore, right, in the South China Sea. And in these boats, these refugees, they'd be overloaded with people. And if one person started to panic, right, that panic would spread to everybody on the boat, and the boat would become unsteady, and these boats would capsize, and lives would be lost at sea. But he also said if one person in the boat could remain calm, could remain mindful, right? Because this is what Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, right? That then everyone in the boat could start to calm down, that calm could spread, that mindfulness could spread from person to person, and they could have hope of being rescued, right? Maybe starting a new life in Singapore, or in France, or in the US, or Canada, or Australia. So it really does start with us. And what the research also really finds is that it really keeps coming back to us. I've brought a few slides with me I can share, right? But parents who practice mindfulness, better communication, more happiness, fewer accidents in the home, educators who practice mindfulness, calmer kids learning more, therapists, again, that's my day job, right? Patients who heal faster, feel more understood. People who live together, roommates and people who live together in houses, right? That their emotions would spread. That person who was practicing mindfulness on 1 week, their roommates' moods were better that same week. They stopped practicing mindfulness and their roommates' moods got worse, right? We know in the professional sector, right? That when a boss practices mindfulness or a supervisor, right? Employees are happier, they feel more content on the job. Doctors who practice mindfulness, greater levels of trust, right? Across the board, mindfulness is contagious. It's not just a great, beautiful story by a spiritual teacher, right? It also is actually true. And I want to come back to this idea, but it does, again, really keep starting with us, right? But it's so hard, right? It feels like so little, right? But for us to have our individual practice, it really does end up impacting those other people around us. And so I want to start to turn now toward this idea of how do we grow through this time? How do we grow stronger? This concept of post-traumatic growth. And this is a traumatic time, right? Whether some of us know people whose lives have been lost or have faced sickness, right? Or people have, been through financial turmoil as they lose their jobs, right? There's so many traumatic and potentially traumatic events happening and so much fear, right? Leading to, so many crises in mental health, certainly what I'm seeing in my work as a clinician, right? The longer this thing drags on. But the reality actually is that the norm in a traumatic situation is not post-traumatic stress out the other side. The more likely scenario is post-traumatic growth. That we come out of this stronger, that we come out more resilient, that we come out as individuals more capable, that we come out as families stronger and closer, that we come out as societies, as cultures, as countries, as companies, as communities, right? That much tighter, right? Assuming we do the right thing, right? Because it's so easy. We can give into the fear and the giving up, right? The fight, the flight, all of that, right? Or we can, shift into the attend, the befriend, the mindfulness, the compassion, right? And start to come out of this that much stronger, that much more resilient, again, as individuals and as larger communities. But how do we really start to do that, right? And I've been thinking about kind of framing this talk and actually a talk I gave earlier for the Brahm Center about post-traumatic growth in terms of growing through, right, taking good care of our bodies through mindfulness, mindful bodies, mindful brains, taking good care of our brains through mindfulness, and taking really good care of our relationships, our communities, our networks of people. And all of these three together, this biopsychosocial model basically allows us to thrive, and we can bring mindfulness to all of these different elements. Right? So what does this actually start to look like in practice? Well, we can start with the bio, right? Taking good care of ourselves. We can bring mindfulness to eating, to sleeping, to exercising, and of course to breathing. And even during this pandemic, right? There's so much that eating, and of course, I wish I was in Singapore so I could be eating, right, some wonderful food right now, right? But we know that we can bring more awareness to eating, and so many of us have done that exercise. I know there's folks doing mindful eating workshops throughout the weekend, right? Eating the raisin and taking a long time to eat it, right? But there's also these more informal ways that we can think about, right? Building resilience through eating. And we know that stress really changes our appetite. It changes the kinds of foods that we crave, right? When we're stressed out, right? We're not craving healthy foods. We're usually craving the junk food and things like that, right? But we can start to shift, become more aware of our food. Some of us are learning how to cook. A lot of us are really thinking in different ways about the food chain, where our food comes from. Right? We're thinking about all those people, the people at the grocery store, the people delivering our food, preparing our food, right? The people working on the farm, shipping the food, right? All of this, right? We suddenly feel so much more connected to the earth, to other people, right? Just through food, and just by even at the beginning of our meals, perhaps taking a moment to just reflect on that chain of people, right? Or as some wonderful mindfulness teachers would say, how it connects us to the earth, right? Can you taste the cloud, which brought the water to the crops, right? Which grew, which we ate, right? All of that, this can connect us, building more compassion, building more awareness, building more mindfulness, right? So these are, again, ways to bring a bit more awareness to food, to eating in a way that's going to be healthy for us. A few years ago, I also wrote a little bit about other ways to bring informally more awareness to eating, right? More mindful eating compared to mindless eating. And I made this little list here, right? Mindless eating, right? Eating past full, ignoring our body's signals. More mindful eating, listening to our bodies and stopping when we're full. Mindless eating, eating because our emotions tell us to eat. And we're certainly having a lot of emotions through this pandemic, right? Whereas more mindful eating, just eating when our bodies tell us to eat, listening to the signals. Eating kind of at random compared to eating with others, eating on a schedule, maintaining a routine when we can, even in the face of this, what feels like chaos and a lack of routine. Eating simply foods that are emotionally comforting versus eating foods that are also nutritionally healthy. Eating and multitasking compared to when we're eating, trying to just eat and enjoy the company of other people. And as I said before, right, considering just, that food to be just that food, compared to really thinking about how it connects us with others and in more expansive ways, bring more awareness in that way. Right? So we can bring more mindfulness to our eating, right? Building ourselves to be more resilient. Even when we're busy, we can slow down a little bit with how we eat. We can try, if we can, to sleep a little bit better. We know that that's going to help us, right, to get the rest that we need so that we're functioning at our best. I know I really did not sleep well, right, for the beginning of this pandemic. And even at other points, it's really been up and down for me. Right, but just finding ways to take good care of our body, right? Even just simply this gesture of self-compassion, placing our hands on our heart for a moment, or giving ourselves a little hug as we lay in bed, or perhaps doing a visualization to fall asleep. Right? All of these can help us. This gentle pressure actually shuts off the stress response, the fight or flight system, signals our body that we're safe, allows oxytocin to start to flow, giving us those feelings of comfort and safety that we're really lacking these days, allowing us also to then begin hopefully to fall asleep. Or just finding some ways to, right, some other simple ways to just relax our bodies. I was sharing earlier with another group, just this simple practice, the calm reminder, just tensing and releasing, almost like a mini body scan, right? Tensing and releasing muscles in your chest and let go. Tensing the muscles in A for your arms, squeezing and releasing. L for legs, tensing those muscles, progressive muscle relaxation, squeezing and letting go. And lastly, clenching those muscles in our mouth and jaw, a place where we tend to hold a lot of emotion, stress, squeezing, tensing your mouth, and releasing the muscles there. And as you do, just releasing them into that smile. In this moment, we're safe, right? As Thich Nhat Hanh says, right, sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, and sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. Letting yourself smile to those around you, those you're quarantined with, or those 5 people that you're allowed to see in a gathering in Singapore, or I know some folks are in Australia, or different kinds of places, right? So this is tough. Getting exercise, right? This is also, I think, so important for caring for our bodies, right? Mindful walking, And what does mindful walking look like when we're in quarantine or we can hardly go anywhere, right? Maybe it's just slowing down a little bit. I remember at the beginning of this, I was like, bringing some things up from the basement, carrying like 3 boxes at once. And I thought, wait, why am I even, what's the rush here? And I just set the box down, carried 1 box up, mindfully walking up the stairs, went back down, carried the next box up, right? Just, again, moving a bit more slowly, sort of doing everything at half speed with double the awareness, right? This kind of thing. If you're inside, right, finding some online yoga courses, right, finding some other online exercise challenges. If you can get outside, and for a long time where we really weren't allowed to leave our neighborhood, and I'm used to getting on planes and flying all over the world and walking around Singapore or walking around Rio or walking around Toronto, right? But over the course of this summer, I've developed this newfound intimacy with my own neighborhood, just every day being out, taking a walk with my mask on, right? And just noticing, right? Oh, today this flower is in bloom today. I can smell this in the air in the evening, and it's different in the morning. The birds are different in the morning than they are in the evening. As the summer goes on, noticing how the sun is different in the sky each day on my walk. As well, of course, of just feeling my feet on the ground, right? And just noticing the changes in the temperature, changes in my body. And knowing too that taking good care of our bodies physically includes physical exercise. And actually the best thing that we can do for our brains in terms of our mental health, mild to moderate depression, mild to moderate anxiety, which a lot of us are feeling these days, right? Light exercise is actually as effective as any medication. And the best thing you can do for your brain, if you ask someone like Dr. Lazar, or you ask another neuroscientist, the best thing you can do for a healthy brain is to get exercise. It doesn't mean running or going all out. It really just means simply walking, getting your heart rate up for even 20 or 25 minutes. These are just a few ways of thinking about bringing more attention, awareness to our body. And then thinking also about our breath and regulating our breath, particularly as we become more anxious, right? I was describing in the workshop for teenagers, right, that you can actually really use your breath like a remote control to shift how you're feeling. Because you can regulate your breath, and that regulates your body, regulates your nervous system and brain, and that actually is what regulates your attention, your impulses, and your emotions, which we're all having such a hard time with right now. Learning how to regulate our breath, wonderful new book by James Nestor about breathing, and just learning how to slow our breath down starts to actually shift, right, what's happening in the brain and the limbic system. Blood actually starts to flow out of the amygdala and limbic system into the other regions of our brain just when we start to slow our breath down to maybe something like 4 to 6 breaths in a minute. Just letting ourselves extend that exhale out a little bit, perhaps even now just checking in with your breath, and then just stretching that exhale. Breathing in, feeling your breath, breathing out, just stretching that exhale. Feeling your breath, tasting your breath, hearing your breath, bringing all of your senses to bear as you just breathe in and breathe out as you just extend that exhale out just a little bit longer. As you breathe, just knowing that you're breathing. And of course, finding those moments in the day when you can just bring a bit more attention, a bit more awareness to each breath, and just letting it just extend out a little bit longer. So if you join me in the other workshops, we'll be doing a lot more breath work in the workshop for teaching mindfulness to kids tomorrow, or for teens, right? be doing some more breath-related practices. So these are some ways we can bring mindfulness into our bodies, right, through this difficult time, to care for our bodies. And we know we need to have strong bodies and strong lungs, right? Strong immune system through what we eat, especially, if we are in a high-risk group or people we know are for COVID-19. So again, caring for our bodies is caring for ourselves, and that in turn is also caring for other people. So mindfulness of body, and then we can think about mindfulness in our brain. And of course, we know that when we're stressed, which most of us are, right, that our perspective is distorted. Under stress, we actually perceive the world differently. We hear sounds at different frequencies. We even see different things. Our perception of the world changes. We actually start having a stronger confirmation bias toward the negative, that everyone is dangerous, that everything is dangerous, that the world is a more dangerous place than it is. And we don't think clearly. This is why we see people online, right, falling into conspiracy theories and things like that. We don't think clearly when we're under stress. We jump to shortcuts, black and white thinking, stereotyping. This happens the more stressed out we are. Our brains really stop working. So to survive this thing and to come out of it stronger, well, here's mindfulness to help us with a little bit more clear seeing, or at least that's certainly what I think. Whether it's mindfulness through a meditation practice or thinking about practices from acceptance and commitment therapy, which some people might be familiar with, who talk about mindfulness without meditation, which sounds a little bit like the mindfulness pill or something like that. But there actually are these other mental tricks we can kind of do that actually help us to see and recognize that our thoughts are in fact just thoughts. There's a bumper sticker that's popular among mindfulness folks in the US that says, "Don't believe everything you think." And that's what a lot of mindfulness is about. It's about learning how to not have to believe everything we think. And so a really empowering practice during this time is to take some time and maybe write out what some of your worries are. You can even do this right now along with me if you like, right? Some of the ones I've had, right? I'm going to lose my income. I'm going to get sick. The kids are never going back to school, right? My family's going to fall apart. People I love are going to get sick. Making this list, there'll never be a vaccine. This will never end. Make a list, write this down, or maybe more personal ones about your family, about your job. And take a look, and then just see if you can add just a few simple words in front of that list. I'm having the thought that I'm going to lose my job. I'm having the thought that I'm going to get sick. I'm having the thought that there will never be a vaccine. And try this. Try repeating these phrases to yourself now, just by framing them as a thought, and see as they start to lose a little bit of their power. Right? When we just simply remind ourselves that this is just a thought, or take that piece of paper that you wrote those worries on, right? Hold it up to your face and notice how it just is all consuming. And then just gently moving it away a little bit further, right? Seeing it get smaller, seeing it fit with the rest of the context of the world. And these thoughts do become their right size. They're thoughts, maybe they're true, maybe they're not. But we can't necessarily assume that they all are, right? Or we end up in more trouble. So that's just a kind of simple practice that we can do, a little mindfulness without meditation. We can also help ourselves see a bit more clearly through practices like gratitude and appreciation. And what these actually really help us do is see things more clearly. Again, as humans, we're wired with what's called the negativity bias. We tend to see everything, think the worst, the glass is half empty, everything's going to go badly. Right? We respond to the negative. We click on the negative news stories, right? We pay attention to this stuff. Our ancestors needed it for survival. But the problem is we get really stuck like that. And then the more stressed out we are, the more we end up just focusing on the negative. And so when we practice gratitude, when we practice appreciation, we actually start to balance that out a little bit. It's not that we're pretending that everything is good, that we're only seeing the good in the world, right? We're bringing in the good as well as seeing the negative, and then we actually see more clearly. Not just all the doom and gloom that we see in the news, that we see on our Facebook, or that we hear from our family or hear from our friends. And so I'll just invite us to take a little bit of time to actually practice some gratitude. And what we know about gratitude also is that it's linked to lower anxiety, lower depression, more happiness, better physical health, as well as mental health. In fact, longer life, more life satisfaction, less aggression, and more kindness, and better sleep. These are just a few of the benefits of practicing mindfulness, which we can do by making a list every day, maybe with our families. Actually, I do this. My wife and I do this with our son every night. He's 6 years old. We talk about the roses in the day, the best things that happen. Let's think of 3 roses. Of course, he'll usually say something like, let's think of 100 different roses that we're grateful for today, because he doesn't want to go to bed, right? So let's just do a couple, right? Or just taking a moment now. Let's take a moment now, and I'll just invite you again. You can just sit up, allow your eyes to close if that's comfortable for you. And I'll ring the bell. And for me, it's night, so I can think back on my day. For you, it's morning. Your day has probably been shorter. But so far today, or maybe yesterday, what was one good moment? One thing that went well? A beautiful thing you encountered, a delicious cup of coffee or meal, or connection with a friend or loved one. Just bring that to mind. What was the scene? Who was there? What did it feel like in your body, in your mind? I'll ring the bell once more. You can allow your eyes to open. And just noticing if there's been a shift from before and after we did this little practice. And I'll just invite you, if you feel comfortable, just type into the chat box what it was. What was the good thing for you today? I had a wonderful dinner, is what I had. It came out perfectly. I barbecued. It came out great. It was delicious. My kids didn't eat it, but it was still just absolutely wonderful. So if you feel comfortable, you can just type something into the chat box. Beautiful, cool morning. Headache went away, right? Yeah, right? So many just simple things that are, oftentimes, right? Being able to see the warm sun, a good workout, right? So many of these simple pleasures that we have. A nice moment with our son, the grandkids, right? Wind on our face, wonderful dinner also, right? Woke up without the alarm clock, right? So many small, wonderful things in our lives. Doing yoga with our family, chocolate milk, that sounds great right now, right? Baking cookies in the morning, boy, I want to come to your house, right? Great workshops, this conference, right? Cool morning in Singapore. It must be hot over there right now. I remember it was so hot when I was there 10 years ago in August. It's probably like exactly 10 years ago. Right? Birds were chirping in the backyard. 2-month-old smiles, right? There are so many wonderful things, and we can start this habit of gratitude. I've been meaning to do this with the kids forever, right? Finally, the pandemic gave us an opportunity to make a habit out of practicing gratitude and appreciation on a daily basis with the family, right? And just looking, at all of these going by, right? 640, 639, right? just wonderful little things in all of our lives. And what it does is it shifts us, again, a bit more toward the positive. Not that the negative isn't happening, because it is. This is not an easy time, but allows us to see more clearly. And as we finish, I'll talk about the power of optimism and creativity, right? But I do want to shift now toward thinking about mindfully caring for our relationships, that social piece. There's a saying that we have in the States: if your mind is a dangerous neighborhood, don't go there alone, right? And we're spending a lot of time in isolation, and it can feel like a dangerous neighborhood in our own minds. So deliberately reaching out to those people that we love, starting text threads, maybe starting a gratitude thread on your gratitude group on Facebook, or a gratitude thread on your email or something like that, right? And sharing with friends, teaching friends, right? Teaching them how to cook if they don't know how to cook, teaching them how to meditate if they don't know how to meditate, teaching them how to do yoga, right? So many different things that we can do to learn how to connect with other people, right? We also say in the States, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I guess in Singapore, you only have 5 people you can spend any time with. So choose wisely the people that you're with, right? Remember that you can't be everybody's support system, right? Practice patience. And also, right, if you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, if you spend a lot of time online, that probably means you're the 5 people who post the most on your Facebook or in your Instagram or your TikTok or whatever your social media might be. And that's maybe not so healthy. Nothing wrong with blocking or taking a break from some of those more difficult people in your social media feed, right? Or just taking a little bit of a break from that altogether, because it can feel like connection, but it can also make us feel more isolated, more alone, more like, well, my quarantine is less fun than their quarantine. Or it can just feel like all doom and gloom and conspiracies all the time, sometimes online as well, right? So really just being aware, of how we're caring for other people through our different practices and through compassion practices, through connection with the people that we do have, appreciating the time that we do have with them, as well as appreciating the time that we need, right, to be able to be by ourselves. And what else can we do during this unpredictable time? One of the things that creates post-traumatic stress is the unpredictability of things, right? Feeling helpless. And we can't predict, of course, what's going to happen in 6 months. Hopefully a vaccine, hopefully therapeutics will be available. Right? We can probably not even predict 6 weeks, hopefully no new outbreaks, or even 6 days, but we can predict the next 6 hours. And I've really found it helpful for myself to be bringing more routines in every day. And again, some of these have been mindfulness oriented, right? As a family, we're doing mindfulness many mornings in a way that we never were before this pandemic. We're doing gratitude at night in a way that we never were before this pandemic, right? And we can make life as predictable as possible by making some plans, but of course not planning those outcomes. I find it helpful to think about rituals and routines. And if you look at people that have survived difficult times, right? Wars, genocides, previous pandemics, right? What people found was looking forward to ritual and the rituals that are embedded in their culture, still honoring those holidays, still going through those rituals on a daily basis, whatever that is for you, eating your 3 meals because you know you're going to need those for energy, as we talked about earlier, right? Still going through those rituals. For me, I find it really helpful to get dressed every day, right? These kinds of things really help, right? And sometimes the structure falls apart, right, without a doubt, but I really try to keep things sort of first this, then that, so that the day is predictable and actually saves a lot of energy in my brain, as well as feeling comforting and familiar. And then some time, where I do just take a different kind of walk, or I do something different, or I listen to my podcast, or I play in the yard with my kids, something more spontaneous too. But having ritual, having routine, these things really are important, and we can bring so much mindfulness to them, especially, in a sense, when we're able to slow down a little bit. And we can connect also. When we're under stress, we tend to regress, right? Like I noticed my 6-year-old acting more like a 4-year-old, right? I noticed myself getting in touch with my old friends, my college friends, in a lot of ways more than my newer friends. I noticed myself going back to comfort foods, back to music I used to love when I was younger. We regress in ways that are not so healthy as well as healthy, and we can welcome those healthier ways with more awareness. We regress also, I think, as a species. There's certainly in the States, right? There's suddenly this tremendous interest in gardening. People are in their backyards gardening all the time, and the stores are sold out of flowers. It's pretty amazing, right? The grocery stores were sold out of flour because people were baking and learning how to cook and getting back in touch with that, right? Home decorating stores were selling out because people were redecorating their homes, making them comfortable again, repainting, right? Doing these things that, again, right, we can deliberately be making our space beautiful, be making our space meaningful, be doing these things that are important to our survival, gardening, digging in the earth, right? Being out in nature, hiking, right? Suddenly people are rediscovering this stuff in these wonderful ways that our ancestors always knew about as we slow down in the modern world. And we can also learn to be not just kinder to others, but kinder to ourselves through practices like self-compassion. If you haven't practiced self-compassion, it can sound pretty hokey. Even I have to admit that. My friend Chris Germer and the work of Kristen Neff has really popularized self-compassion around the world, and just giving yourself a break, treating yourself how you probably treat others, but maybe you don't give yourself that same compassion. And so I want to be clear that it's, we can do these practices to be more resilient or to be more grateful, but it's also okay to not be okay. In fact, there's a book called It's Okay to Not Be Okay. I think it's a great title for a book. I wish I'd thought of it. But it's a good reminder that this is just a hard time. None of us are doing this right at all. And so let's do a little self-compassion practice. Again, you can find a comfortable posture in your body. Allow your eyes to close if that feels comfortable for you. And I'll invite you to bring to mind now, rather than a pleasant experience to be grateful for, perhaps a bit of a difficult or challenging experience in the last couple of days. I want to be clear, I want this to be a small thing, a small imperfection. Maybe you ate too much, maybe you couldn't figure out the Zoom, maybe you weren't as kind as you wish you'd been to your partner, your kids, or somebody else, lost your patience, lost your temper. One of those moments where you weren't perfect. Dinner was late. Who knows what? A time, right, that inner critic that we all have was just chattering away in our minds. You're not good enough. Why couldn't you do this right? And just noticing the tone, the words of that inner critic that we all have. Noticing how it feels as those words land. Tension or discomfort in your body. And then just naming that, just labeling that. This is painful. This is uncomfortable. This is unpleasant. This does not feel good. And notice just what happens when you name it. And then finding some words or some sentiment that actually allows you to connect and feel perhaps less alone. Perhaps the reminder from me or from yourself that everybody makes mistakes, that this pandemic has been hard for all of us, that none of us is doing this perfectly. Hundreds of us around the Asia Pacific region right now, around the world, even beyond, all of us together in this Zoom call feel inadequate, do not feel like we're doing this right or as well as we could. And then offering yourself the kinds of words you might offer a friend or a child or someone else in this group. May you let this go. May you forgive yourself. And if you like, you can even just place a hand on your heart or give yourself a hug, as we did a little bit ago. Feeling that gentle, affectionate touch. May I be kind to myself. May I learn from this and do better next time. May I move on. And just taking just another moment with these kinder words and this kinder tone. This is painful. None of us are perfect. May I be kind to myself. Whatever those words are that resonate for you. And then perhaps making a kind wish for yourself. May you be happy. May you be safe. A kind wish for all of us together this morning or this evening, wherever you're watching. May we all be safe. May we all be happy. And lastly, a kind wish for the world. And I'll ring the bell once more. And you can bring your attention back outward, back to the screen. And just knowing that these
Chris,
simple acts of
questions.
Yeah, we can shift over to questions now. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. We'll start with the first one. How do you reconcile the need to slow down and be mindful while trying to meet seemingly endless deadlines in a highly competitive environment?
This, I think, is true in all times. And I think this is particularly true these days in these quarantine times that we're all living in. And to me, it's about, it's not just slowing down. It's recognizing when we do have that moment that we can slow down, right? So it's finding those little moments in the day when we can maybe take a pause of some kind, right? So that it's, I tend to think about, well, I've actually got a slide that I didn't quite get to, of just those little moments, like when you're waiting for the elevator, right? That's a moment that we can be settling down, feeling our feet on the ground. Right? As we're, taking a walk into the next room, right? Or even, those little moments when we can be feeling our feet on the floor or something like that, right? Right after the kids go to bed, for me, has been one. In the morning when I wake up, right? For many years, there's a wonderful mindfulness teacher who suggests 15 good breaths first thing in the morning. I did that for a long time. For a long time, also, I sometimes find the breath, my mind wanders just listening to 10 sounds first thing in the morning. Right? Starting and ending a meeting, whether it's a Zoom meeting, right? Between those calls, right? Leaning back, taking a few breaths, right? Offering ourselves some self-compassion, and then bringing it into whatever it is that we might be doing, right? Can we bring it into, right, family time in some different ways? Can we bring it into the workplace, workspace in some different ways? Can we bring more mindfulness to chopping our vegetables, right? These other little moments that we might have in the day. When I throw this slide up here, actually. And it's, tying it to just at least one or two of these things, as Sharon Salzberg says, mindfulness isn't difficult or easy. It's remembering to be mindful. That's the hard part. Right? And so slowing down also, one thing I like to do every so often, whatever I'm doing, is just to slow down and just ask myself, what am I doing right now and how do I know I'm doing it? And checking in with my 5 senses. How do I know that I'm walking right now? Right? How do I know that I'm eating right now? I can see the food, I can taste the food, I can smell the food, right? Just asking ourselves this simple question every so often can be really helpful. Or I have a friend who talks about single tasking, just doing one thing at a time. That this is also, right, a way that we, again, just bring more awareness to whatever it is that we're doing. He actually has an event he calls Do One Thing at a Time Day, which is like a mindfulness day. But again, even just trying to do a bit more one thing at a time. Or this meme I saw a couple of years ago, it says there's this guy at the coffee shop sitting at a table, not on his phone, not on a laptop, just drinking his coffee like a psychopath, right? Just when we've got that moment, right, to drink our coffee, like close the computer, put the phone away, just enjoying those few sips, right? Because a lot of us right now, we don't have time for 20 minutes, let alone 10 minutes, right? If you've got kids and if you've got a job, or if you're caring for, your parents or other relatives, like you do not have a lot of time during this pandemic, right? I feel like this has divided the haves from the have-nots, as well as the, have kids and responsibilities from the, do not have kids. But I know my time is really limited. So finding those little moments, right? And finding, these little rituals that we have of mindfully making our coffee or mindfully pouring our cereal in the morning, these things can help, but this is so hard. And then I think being patient with yourself and practicing self-compassion. I don't have to be, I look at my social media and everyone at the beginning was like, I'm going to learn how to meditate. It's like, great. I learned that 20 years ago. I don't have time to do it anymore. Right. So trying to be easy on myself, trying to be easy on yourself if you can't get to this stuff the way that you used to, but still pushing yourself to see what you can get to. Absolutely. Thank
Well,
you.
we always have time to go to the toilet, and the toilet.
Absolutely.
Just,
right. Washing our hands mindfully, right? All of these. Yeah.
and also to change our perspective about deadlines. When we
Right.
stop getting projects, we will stop getting deadlines. And that will also mean that'll be the end of our job.
Right.
So the deadlines with activity that were needed, and that's why we have a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you once again to everyone. And Dr. Sarah Lazar's talk is happening in the other webinar room too. You would have received a link, so you may want to join that, and welcoming you back as well to the next session in this webinar room. Thank you again, Chris, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. Have fun. See you tomorrow, today, tonight. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.